Hey folks, John Sansom, and today I've got a quick tip for you to how you can add pop to your images. Let's get into it. Folks always ask me, how do you add that additional polish, give images a bit of a kick? Some people call it pop. Essentially what you're doing is increasing the highlights and darkening the shadows, and this gives more depth to your image and almost a kind of three-dimensional feel to it. And it's a great way to make your images stand out and actually give them a bit more of character, I suppose. The key to a lot of this stuff, as always with retouching, is not to overdo it. So we'll go through the process today, and I'll show you a few different ways that you can kind of control the strength of the pop, if you like. Now, here we have an image of our model Alice Vinner, and I'll leave her details down in the description box for those of you that are interested. And as you can see, I've done the majority of the retouching on this image already, keeping it very natural. Here's the before, and here's the after. So you can see I just did a little bit of work on the eyebrows, a bit of skin cleanup, and that's pretty much it. I'm kind of happy with where this is already. Disclaimer, I did actually do some skin work in Capture One Pro before I brought the image in, which is why the skin tones are very well balanced. There's a super cool feature in Capture One Pro 11, and I just absolutely love it for actually doing skin work. It makes my life so much easier and simplifies my workflow. So if you're interested in seeing anything about that, leave me a comment and I can create a video for that too. Alright, so what we want to do now then to add our pop effect is, first of all, we want to create what's called a stamp visible layer. A stamp visible layer is where we combine all the changes we have made in each of our individual layers into a single layer, so that we can then go ahead and make further edits on it. So the way to do that is if we hold down Shift and select the layers that we want to combine, and then press Ctrl J to make a copy of them, and Ctrl E to combine them into a single layer. On a Mac, you just use the Command key instead of Control. So let's call this layer contouring. And here's where the magic happens. What we're going to do now is we're going to add a high pass filter onto this layer. Now, some of you may be familiar with high pass filters. They're often used for sharpening. However, in this case, we're actually going to push it to the extreme, and you'll see that as we jump right in here. So if we go to Filter, Other, High Pass, and typically if we were going to sharpen a layer, we would have a radius of about 2 to 10 typically, so that we can see the outline of what we're doing. You usually pull it back once you start to see your colors bleeding. However, because what we're trying to do here is actually contour our image, we want a really high radius. So if we push further to maybe like 2/3 or so, until we start to see this haloing effect, that's when you know you're in the zone. So if we hit OK, obviously this looks pants, so we need to change the blend mode on our layer, and we'll go ahead and change it to soft light if I can find it. There we go. Zoom out a little bit, and here's without the effect, and here is with the effect applied. You can see that's pretty drastic. Obviously that's too much, so we want to dial that right back down, and I typically find about 25–30% is a good place to be. Obviously it's down to your individual taste, but for me that's looking pretty good. So we've turned it off and then turn it back on, and you can really see the effect taking place around Alice's fingers here. If you look at the shadow and the highlight, and if I turn that off and then turn that on, you can see that those shadows really deepen there. So that's it. Just a very quick tip as to how you can contour your image using a high pass filter. If you guys have a question about fashion photography or image retouching, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Boom! Bonus tip guys. Thanks for sticking around. So one of the things that folks always ask is, how do you color grade your images? How do you give them that cool effect? How do you make it look like the Gucci campaign? Alright, people don't ask me that, but people often ask about, do you use presets and all of that? I've got to be honest, I've never been a fan of presets. I've found that every single time I use somebody's preset pack, probably did it like 3 or 4 times, they never work. Because your starting image doesn't look anything like what theirs it does, right? You're not the same photographer, you're shooting something completely different, the light you're working with is not the same. It's totally pointless. Instead, what you should do is actually do your own custom color grading, and I'm going to quickly go through and show you one of the ways that you can do that now. So the easiest way to do this really is to just add a curves layer as a starting point. And I always like to start off in the blue channel. So here we're just going to flip the contrast a little bit. So we're going to increase the blues in the shadows. I always like to overdo it a little bit because I will use the layer's opacity to dial it back down afterwards. So I'm kind of liking that. We're going to the red channel. See if we can add some more reds into those shadows and then bring the green down there a little bit. Oh, I'm liking that. I'm liking that a lot. And if we just adjust this a touch, yeah, that's looking pretty damn cool. And if we turn that off and then back on again, you can see the effect is quite dramatic. So if we pull that down a touch, yeah, I'm kind of liking it about there, to be honest. It looks very dreamy, which I think goes with the mood of the shot. And then if we just group that into our color grading layers, and I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'll dial it down a bit more, about 75%, and turn it off and turn it on. And there you have it. How long did that take? A couple of minutes, color grading, job done. And you know, if you want to reuse what you've created on your other images, you just simply open both files in Photoshop and then drag the layer over to the other file and it will copy it over, and that way you maintain relative consistency across your images in terms of your color grading. Pretty straightforward. It's a really good way to experiment with things as well. Just go in, push and pull the curves. You can't damage anything. If you do, you just delete the layer and you know, discover your own grades. And it's super interesting to play around with, actually. Quite often, random tangent here, the music that you listen to can influence the way that you're grading and working on your images, right? So if you're listening to Swedish death metal, it's probably going to make you quite angry and you're going to create a dark image. Whereas if you're listening to 80s love ballads, then, you know, you probably need to get out more. Alright, there's a bonus tip for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.